Welcome to A Woman's Brew, where women talk about beer. In today's episode, we chat all about time, place, and beer with Ben from 360 Degrees Brewing. I'm Joanne, and this is Tori.
Hello, hello.
And we're two beer-loving women on a mission to get more people drinking and talking about great beer. Come join us.
Welcome, Ben. Do you want to tell us a little bit introduction to who you are, where you're from, just for anyone listening?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Ben, and I am the business development manager for the 360 Degree Brewing Company. We're based down in Sussex, about half an hour from Brighton, so very, very southern. So yeah, I've been in the job now for just over 2.5 years. It's been a pretty wild and interesting and crazy and developing 2.5 years. I'm still here, which I think always says a lot when you're kind of taking on a job for the first time. But yeah, it's definitely been a fantastic place to be so far.
Amazing. I think before we start talking more about the brewery as a whole, we should just get right into crack and open a beer and just getting down to it.
That works perfectly for me.
Yeah. Amazing. So the first one that we're going to open today is Neighbours, which is a hazy pale ale. It's 4.8%. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that while we crack it open?
Yeah, so this is the second batch of Neighbours that we've done. So Neighbours was originally released in the middle of the summertime, and it just went down really, really well with everyone who had taken it. It like smashed and sold out at every beer festival it was pouring at. And we were like, you know what, like let's bring it back a little bit sort of ahead of time. So it's like a 4.8 pale. The name, which we actually planned back at the start of the year, was to be like a little nod to the fact that it's Southern Hemisphere hops. So it's got Vic Secret, it's got Ella, it's got Nelson, it's got Rawaka. So obviously the four of those hops are all very oily and resinous and have got like a lot of tropical aroma going on in them. And then it kind of just coincidentally meant that when we actually brought it out for the first time, it happened to coincide with when its namesake television show was due to have its final ever episode.
Yeah. Right, okay, that makes sense.
So like it's kind of what we've done with like all of our beers this year in terms of, well, not all of it, most of the beers we've released this year have had a name that is like a nod or a derivative or a quote from somewhere in popular culture. Okay. Mostly it's been like songs, often find like a random B-side lyric from something somewhere or something a bit more obvious. We kind of felt we'll let our GM name this one. And he was like, oh, Australia, Neighbours. We're like, cool, we'll go with that.
Yeah, sure, that one works. I'll have to fit. Hang on. It smells like very juicy. I like it.
It smells really just, the head on it is beautiful. It's got a gorgeous foamy white head there. So do people like put in suggestions for the names? Do you have like a little round table when you do that?
Yeah, so it's a combination of things. I mean, like often it will kind of be myself and our MD will kind of like back and forth with different ideas. We'll have like a general concept for where we want to go with the name. But yeah, it will be kind of the case of sometimes we'll all just kind of suddenly get YouTube and Google up and start just playing songs in the office. We're like, oh, I like that lyric. Let's go with that one. I'm just think of an example for one. So back in the spring, we released a couple of beers which were all English hopped, and so the thinking was if we're going with like lyrics and songs to do with where the beers have got from, whether it's ingredients or whatnot, then we're like, okay, we're doing English and Sussex and all that kind of stuff. We were like, right, let's have a look at some Sussex musicians. So we ended up finding a beer that was called, what we called All I Want Is Summer, which was from a random song by The Cure, like an early noughties B-side. Nice. And then it came out a month before a dipper that was called Miss the Sun. There was a nice little sort of theme when we were releasing these in late winter, early spring. They're like kind of like melancholy towards like, I want summer. All I want is summer. I miss the sun. I miss the sun is from Let Her Go by Passenger, who's a Brighton boy originally.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. So there's sort of fairly sort of more obvious ones. Others are a bit more kind of convoluted, but yeah, we kind of try and do like a lot of that kind of idea with like trying to sort of have linkages to the origins of where the ingredients or the style or something to do with its provenance, essentially.
That's super cool.
That's clever.
So I don't know too much, admittedly, about the brewery. So just like it would be interesting to know more about just the brewery as a whole. Like how long ago was the brewery sort of founded?
So it often surprises people when I tell them that 360 is turning 10 next year.
Oh wow!
Oh wow!
Yeah, I mean,
there you go.
that wasn't just there for effect. I think I could see on their faces there was some real surprise.
That was not planned. That was not.
Yeah, that was not planned.
We
at
didn't
all.
plan that.
So 360 was originally set up by a couple of guys who are no longer with the project, and they were in charge from its inception in 2013 all the way through until the start of COVID, and it kind of like hit a sort of a plateau in sort of like 2018, 2019 of having a sort of fairly decent level of local towards regional sort of distribution, mainly direct. There were sporadic bits into London, but most, if not all, of what they were doing was on the traditional cask side. So it was different bitters, various pales, but yeah, by and large, everything was going into Firkin. And they had started to do a little bit into keg and to can. But again, it just hadn't quite sort of caught on with what they were doing at the time when the industry was obviously exploding with popularity and new breweries popping up left, right, and centre, sort of in that period, sort of between 2015 and 2019. And then one of the partners, I think it had run its course for him in terms of his interest in what he was doing. And then when it kind of then went down to one person being in charge, I think steadily his interest then was diminishing as well. The business was starting to run into the red. It hadn't quite sort of caught that wave of where craft was getting its momentum from. And it was I gather there'd been failed attempts to crowdfund and whatnot. And then obviously COVID came around, and like as we've seen through the last couple of years, it has been the final nail in the coffin for more than a few breweries, unfortunately, and obviously for different reasons, but it's definitely been a contributor to what we're seeing at the moment. And so 360 was looking like it was going to go down sort of in March, April 2020. But then like Robin, who's our MD, he lives locally in Lewis, and he became aware 360 was on the market, and he'd recently been put in charge of building a drinks brand predominantly on the wine side. But they were looking to to diversify where they were sort of building this group of beverage brands. And by virtue of being local, new 360 was becoming available, and straight away sort of put the investors towards it, and they're like, let's do this. So change of hands happened in late April, early May of 2020. And so it was an interesting one because the business was basically having to kind of start again because it was a complete change of the guard in terms of personnel. But we still had that interesting position where the brand was known by some people, which was like a good thing and a limitation at times, because like when certain people have got like a perception or an opinion of frankly anything, it doesn't have to be necessarily beer or breweries, but particularly in our industry, people like to sort of stick with their opinions and are quite hard pressed to be changed. And so that's then meant that we've obviously had even more of like a microscope on us in terms of what we've then been trying to do, because it's like, oh, well, I had a 360 beer a couple of years ago and it wasn't particularly great. What's making me want to ever try you again when I've got all these other people to go and try instead, which is a valid comment. But it's it then meant that as we were then trying to kind of rebuild the brand, learn everything as we were going along as well, that there was this real kind of split in terms of the kind of people that we were trying to essentially sort of convince to give us a go.
I always find that really interesting, like seeing how somebody how you go through that change, because I mean, I feel like we can all sort of, I'm sure that everyone kind of like listening can think of at least like one brewery where you maybe had a bad experience and or you've seen it not, you know, go down like a lead balloon sort of thing, and you go, oh no. And so it's got to be, when you have someone that's had a bad experience, that is like, oh, I don't know, it's got to be so difficult to turn that around. But then, you know, you think like you have to almost give somebody the opportunity to try to turn it around. This hazy pale, really, really lovely. Like it's very drinkable. Very drinkable. It's very fruity, it's very juicy, it's lovely, and I really like the artwork on it as well. It's just like really subtle. There's like flowers. I'm guessing that's eucalyptus on the photo. I can't really tell. If you're looking at the video, you can kind of see the can art, but it's very like subtle, very nice. Overall, it's really great. And I feel like if people hadn't given you like a second chance to be like, oh, okay, let's sort of change the view that maybe people have of us, like we wouldn't have something that is quite drinkable now. Like, what was it like going through that change, like with the business? Was it like quite difficult internally, or, you know, was it fairly smooth? Or
I mean, I think I've got the benefit of being able to talk about that now in retrospect, because at the time for all of us, it was just a learning curve. Everything was just new and of course you'd do things well, you'd make plenty of mistakes along the way, and so you kind of only began to, as time went on, kind of understand, perhaps when you would look back at maybe why you didn't win that business there, or why they weren't willing to meet with you, or they gave you, or they said certain things with their feedback about the products in the earlier days. And it's, you just kind of have to put that together as time goes on, for sure. So it's kind of hard to kind of pinpoint it. I mean, for me now, I almost kind of thrive on the opportunity now that I've been doing the job long enough. Be like, oh, well, you think, you know what, something about us. Well, let me just see what you think of this. And obviously, I'm not going into it as cockily as that, but like, for me, I really do enjoy like changing someone's opinion for the better when it comes to particularly our beers. When they're like, oh yeah, I had it like a couple of years ago. I was like, okay, cool, try it now and see what you think.
Yeah.
I think I've seen, like, I as I was saying, like I didn't know much about the brewery as a whole. Like I'd seen, I think, in passing, but I hadn't heard anything negative. I just, you know, I wasn't as sort of well versed, because I think it's hard, because I'm from Berkshire. We've got like a few breweries in that area, and then there's, you know, I think you get used to almost your own local scene to a degree sometimes, that you can kind of like, you know, you don't necessarily look like further afield at other breweries. So like I think I had seen, you know, 360 in passing, but I'd never tried it myself, and I hadn't heard anything like negative or anything like that. And then we connected at Arundel. That was like a whole mission in itself. I feel like to get to this podcast was like a whole mission in itself, because I remember like we were trying to have a conversation, and we'd start a conversation, and then like 2 minutes into that conversation the bar was going mental, and then you're like, I'll come back in 5 minutes, and I was like, put a pin in it, we'll talk in 5 minutes. And then 5 minutes later, we'd go, okay, cool, let's have a conversation. And then 2 minutes later, someone else would come up, and I'd be like, okay, just put a pin in it. I think it took us literally 2 days.
It was a busy festival.
Numerous hours to have one conversation.
I came back to the festival purely just to finish off that conversation.
And this is not an exaggeration of like we had a conversation over the course of 2 days. And I mean, I was like really excited to kind of learn more about 360 as well, just because it was just like it was nice getting to meet somebody like representing the brewery as well, and having that. So I was like very keen to learn more. And you had mentioned about the whole moving from that sort of more cask market to the more of like the keg market. And I mean, was there any challenges in itself that kind of presented, or, you know, I guess moving that, was that kind of an easy decision for everyone to go, well, this is the direction that a lot of it's going, this is where we need to go? Or,
well, I think it's an interesting, because like we've still got a very, very solid cast programming with what we're doing, and like that for us is a nod to not just like our heritage, because we're not going to go out suddenly just be like, nah, we're going to completely forget about the 360 volt, because there's still plenty of drinkers who did like our beers and like have only then just enjoyed us all the more. And it's for us really important to try and keep cask ale as an entity still going anyway. Like 100%. We're really lucky down where we are in Sussex and in across the country particularly, but like Sussex has got a really good beer scene. Lots of country pubs take real ale on a regular basis. So like for us, we want to make sure we can do that, but it's then taking the lessons from what we're doing on the more contemporary sort of top pressure method of brewing, and letting the two skill sets complement one another. But I think in terms of kind of where we were going to go, it was always the intention to turn 360 towards like the modern sort of side of beer. Like I'd been out in Canada for a couple of years before COVID, and so I'd been used to very, very hoppy West Coast beers, New England as well. I'd sort of had my first experience with sours and had my head completely blown and my palate completely blown by those. And so I was coming into that with like that level of craft understanding. Robin, our MD, had lived in California. His daughter had been born just up the road from where Russian River Brewery is. So again, it's like that modern hoppy beer was always kind of what we've been aspiring towards. It's just been a case of then learning and taking the journey to get there while not forgetting who we are. And it's been an interesting one because we like to always try and think that we want to try and make a beer for everyone within our range, which is really, really quite tough to do because obviously there's a plethora of beer styles around and you're not going to always be a master of everything. But we at least want to make like a version of each particular style or package type that at least makes people want to drink it again.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that's the thing, like breweries and beer is for everybody, and there is like I'm one of these firm believers that's like there is a beer that you're like you've just got to find the right one. And yeah, being able to try all the things and make all the things but still making things that people want to buy on a regular basis, and you want to be able to experiment but you got to sell the beer as well. Are you finding that difficult, or have you got like a method for that you're finding is working for you at the minute?
In terms of
like being able to make all the things that you want to make, but also kind of, being able to, with ingredient prices going up and energy prices going up and having enough tank space, things like that.
Yeah, so I guess with the last point, we've been lucky that we've been able to reinvest back into ourselves as we've gone. Like from where we're at right now with the brew, we're now on a 4,000 litre kit, and when I arrived, we were on 1,000 litres, and it's got 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, and then tanks have been added to the brew kit, and others have been retired in the process. So we've always been able to have the capacity that we've needed in that regards. But we've also had to kind of be a bit savvy and understand where our specialisms are and where we've been most successful, not in terms of where we're happy with it, but where the market and the bottom lines have been hit on a commercial level. And so I definitely said that we're putting most of our focus into doing pale ales and IPAs, just because I think we've consistently done best with those styles. It's the styles that the guys on the brewery floor I guess I'm the most comfortable with because they've got enough experience with it. But then we also understand that you can't almost just play it safe all the time. You've got to like do some weird and wacky and interesting things. But because we've got an MD who's got a background in wine, everything has to have balance. It can't just be like knock your socks off with something ridiculously cloying and sweet and mouth puckering, because he just won't let that happen.
I was going to say, what's the craziest you've gone, do you think?
Probably, so we did an elderflower saison,
okay,
which on the face of it isn't all that crazy, I realised, but we used bay leaves, coriander seeds in it as well.
Oh, nice.
It had like a real like umami savoury depth to it. And then we used Sriracha Ace hops, so it had that sort of like that pickle note to it as well.
Sriracha Ace is always like
polarizing,
a bold choice. Like that is like that in itself is always like, yeah, as Joe said, very polarizing. Like I feel like you always see people like either love it or hate it, and there's very few people that are like, I could take it or leave it. Like people either feel one way very strongly or the other. Yeah, so I personally like it.
We put a bit of Multiwaker in there for good measure as well, to kind of
nice.
round it off a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, like the quote that still sticks in my head is someone compared it to Big Mac sauce, the end product.
That's interesting.
Wow.
Wow. Like, I was like, okay, I can understand how you got that, but
yeah,
then like kind of sort of taken away from like the sort of the acidic levels that you would be getting on the palate from it, obviously being a saison instead.
Yeah.
But again, it's just that funny thing because it had those various savory notes within it. Like, I guess if your palate's not kind of expecting it, you're like, oh, what can I sort of articulate that's like it?
Yeah.
Big Mac sauce. I do that. No, but I'm similar. I do similar like all the time. I'll be like trying to think about like what something tastes like, and sometimes I can only describe it in terms of like, sometimes not even in terms of food. Like I'm like, oh, what experience does this make me think of? Like, and that's how I can describe like particular flavors when it's really hard to put words to it.
What beer was it that you described as this tastes like the beach?
I did say that. It was
Did it have lots of sediment in it?
No, it didn't.
I was like a sandy beer.
It wasn't even bad. I actually really liked
she was
it.
like, I really like it.
It was Lucky Saints alcohol free.
Oh yeah,
Lucky Saint alcohol free like lager. And I don't know, like I still can't put the words to it. It's just I drank it and I was like, oh, I'm fairly certain it was the
yeah, I think it was, yeah. You're right, now you've said it. Yeah.
And I think it was just because it almost had this like, I don't know, this like freshness, like sun creamy, but it like wasn't coconut at all. Like it wasn't coconut, so it wasn't like sun cream, but it was like this freshness and like, I don't know, just tasted like going to the beach. That was like the only thing that I could describe. I was like, I don't know what words to use to describe the taste, but it tastes like going to the beach. And I think when I said it, you were like, weirdly, I feel like I can understand what you're saying. And I was like, yeah.
That was an interesting conversation.
Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, I had no other way to describe it. I'm conscious, obviously, you guys.
I was gonna say,
I've not been well, so there's going to be like numerous episodes that come out that you're just going to hear me be like, I'm not well, and I am drinking today as opposed to other ones in this lovely glass that you guys have across. It is super sturdy. I love it. It's great. Thank you so much. But I'm conscious. I'm just drinking one. You guys going to drink a range. So.
As we just mentioned, a lager. Shall we crack open Pavilion next?
Yes, let's
do that. This one, and so I really like the style of the labels of Neighbours and Pavilion, but then we've also got You Get What You Need Dipper here, which is a very different style of label. Is there a reason for that, or is it just?
Yeah, well, I'll touch on that because we've been using that kind of white domination with our branding pretty much since like we've been the team. Okay. So we began to kind of roll out a rebrand with things in like sort of September, October time of 2020, and our theory was trying to be like, right, if we're going to start putting out cans to a market that's so saturated, when you're going into a bottle shop, where's your focus? Because you can often have that kind of overwhelming sensation that there's just color and so much interesting stuff going on everywhere, but almost like taking a leaf out of like the Apple book, where that simplicity, that clean aesthetic can actually sort of catch the eye a bit more.
Yeah.
And so we rolled with that for like quite some time. But we've kind of also been taking on board feedback from our stockists, and they've said that like some of them would be sort of more captivating to their customers than others, which perhaps is maybe just a lesson for us in terms of where we can kind of be consistent with our branding. And so we were like, right, okay, if we kind of want to keep a more consistent motif, then we're going to start moving a bit more towards having the words in the same typeface, in the same kind of blocks, but then just put a bit more color into the photos and the branding, just so particularly now we're back into bars where that focus is on something that's like only like kind of that kind of big.
Yeah.
And you've really got to catch the attention really quickly. And if it's just like solid white with a couple of graphics and your logo, unless people are like desperately in love with us, which of course we would want people to get to eventually, but we have to understand where we are as a brand, that we are still growing, and we have to win that first visual impression super quickly. So taking on that feedback that we weren't doing that as well as we could have done, we're moving a bit more towards having more color in our branding. And it's kind of we're using the base of the Sussex Haze can, which for us is like our flagship beer. So that one came out just over 2 years ago now. And as much as it kind of had consistency with a lot of white domination in the background, it was always like an anomaly versus where everything else had a more consistent motif with image down like the left side when you're looking at it, typeface to the right, with each kind of word having its own unique typeface relative to where the beer was from. So there was a lot of kind of background thought within each one, but like interestingly, the feedback we always got was that the Sussex Haze branding looked the strongest. And so we were like, okay, well, let's kind of use that as the framework with the other feedback we've had kind of brought in, and start putting more kind of color and more like bar worthy branding in terms of where we're going with things. So Pavilion will get a bit of a facelift. We're not going to kind of do too much with it. We're going to basically kind of take the Pavilion and move it more towards the center, make it a bit more in the same kind of place as where for Sussex Haze the West Pier is.
Okay.
And obviously, like with these two cans, they're both in our core range. They're both very strong pictorial representations of Brighton, and so that's kind of what we're trying to do with a lot of like our core, is still kind of maintain that localism and show that we've got an identity as a Sussex brewery. But then it means that for further afield, there's a recognition of, oh, like 360, they're there in the same way as you would say, for example, off my head a good example of somebody who does it now. I kind of can't even think off my head. But there's method to the madness in any case. So
I was going to ask you. I was going to say, like, is that the pier in Brighton? Like, I was literally like, I had been looking at it and I was like, oh, for some reason, I feel like that's the Brighton pier. Even though, like, for anyone like just listening, it's basically, I don't know how to say it. It looks like, for me, it looks like the Brighton pier if it was very foggy and it was like you couldn't see the pier fully.
Very, very hazy.
Yeah, exactly. And then just based on the name, I was like, I bet that's what it is.
Yeah, so that is exactly what it is. So
I think it's a really clever. It is quite a strong, like, label, I think, in that sense as well. It looks it does feel very like strong for like a minimalist approach to it as well. Like, it's nothing too bright and flashy in your face or anything like that. It's very, very like simple yet very effective, I think. And like, as a person that is a label magpie, I do kind of feel like these actually all these ones that we were talking about, you know, Neighbours, Pavilion, Sussex Haze, like, they do all still catch my eye, even though they are more like simplified than, say, you know, You Get What You Need, which is a full photo across it. Because I think there's something to be said for that white space. For me, anyways, I think like where it is a lot of white and then like a few bits, like, you know, a bit of flower tree and all that for, you know, Neighbours, I feel like that white space where there is stuff, it's more meaningful where there is something there. And it definitely draws you in, I think, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because there's still certain bits of the core that are going to have like that white domination. So like Pavilion, it's not like we're going to suddenly put like a big saturated blue sky behind it. It's still going to have the illustration of the pier from in its heyday on it. It'll still have white in the background. And just like this afternoon and yesterday, we've been like rejigging like the revamp of like an old cast beer we're bringing back next year. And it was just literally a case of, just as we kind of moved things around, what we've done is we've brought the typefaces we're using for the new stuff, but then we're still keeping the aesthetic of how it was otherwise. So it's got a bit of that old and that new. So there's a bit more of a synergy between where the white labels are versus the more color orientated ones. And I think from where early discussions have been, we kind of are going to have that separation now, where the core will have the white cream backgrounds, attention to detail with where we put certain things, and then the specials and the one-off limited edition beers will go a bit more wacky, crazy, and wonderful. Because I guess over time you build a visual recognition of core products, whereas you kind of have to win that battle for the consumer's attention with each respective beer that you release. So often a bit more color saturation tends to do that with the one-off beers we've kind of seen from our feedback.
And it makes total sense.
Yeah.
When you're talking about your core range, like what would you say are the ones that are in your core range for anyone that doesn't know?
So we've got Sussex Haze, which is a 4.5% DDH juicy pale. That beer for us has been absolutely like the panache, the catalyst for our acceleration, where people's perceptions have changed, where the people who had never heard of 360 see us from, because it was the first time we'd actually proven that we could nail biotransformation and make a New England hazy pale. And from the get-go, it's only ever had fantastic feedback. And then it's just been, like the beer that we have been known for really since. And so that's been really exciting to kind of have that as like our leading product to then build around. Because like with that kind of idea, what I'd mentioned previously, trying to sort of have a beer for everyone within what we're doing. On the keg side, we've always wanted to have a lager, pilsner kind of product, because as we kind of know, lager is still by percentages the most widely drunk style of beer globally by quite some way. Like, of course, you're factoring in macro into that and so on and so forth. But if so many people in their perception of beer is lager or pilsner, whatever kind of style it's going to be within that side of it, you've got to try and like cater to that side of it somewhere. So that's where Pavilion, which is a very new beer, actually, we only released it at the start of November. It's a Hellas lager. It took the place of a beer called Checkmate, which was actually an award-winning dry hop pilsner. It won gold in the World Beer Awards last year. So it was a great beer, but it was an interesting one. It never quite took off to the levels we were hoping for. And the feedback we were getting, again, we want to listen to people who are selling our product for us, was that just ever so slightly too high in ABV, 5% for the session drinker. And the word Pilsner had almost lost its coolness.
Okay.
It was a really interesting thing when people had said that, like when they put a Pilsner on for most people, if you were to put a lager on in its place, it would just sell so much better. And I think it's just that weird thing of semantics of what people are looking for when they're going to get a lager. They're going to get a lager. So we then kind of looked to the wider mass markets and the leaders of like the style. We were like, right, like Hellas is a very approachable and engaging and easy drinking sort of sub style of lager. And when you look at what beers have ultimately kind of become macro craft, Camden Hells is the first one that springs to mind. And it didn't get to that level besides anything to do with AB InBev for any other reason besides the Hellas style is just very, very easy and approachable to drink. And so other beer styles that were popular were like, okay, again, looking at what sells to the macro market, Moretti, these other beer styles are around that kind of 4.6% level. What's the best lager of all, in the world? And we were all like, oh yeah, we quite think Augustina, Hellas. So we were like, okay, well, let's give it a go and see what we think. And yeah, so far the feedback's been really, really good. So that's now sticking as like our lager in the core range for the foreseeable. And I'll be really excited to kind of see how it gets on with people when the weather is kind of more lager like orientated.
Yeah.
We've always had a session IPA in our core range. That's like one of a few beers that have kind of stood the test of time from the old to the new. It's 4.3%. It's Mosaic, Amarillo, and Chinook. And it's just a very easy drinking, grapefruit, tangerine, transparent, classic session IPA. Because there's still always that space for that hoppy pale versus where people want to have the haze and the juice. So again, trying to think what can we do to make sure we've got a beer for everyone within the range. So that trio is kind of where we're at for like the keg and can space. We'll always have like a NEPA in our range, whether that's like a New Zealand hopped beer or a sort of mix of North and Southern Hemisphere hops with Green Monster, but there'll always be like a NEPA because everyone loves a NEPA. Well, not everyone. NEPA drinkers like NEPAs. But then going back to kind of what we've been saying in terms of where we've come from, like we've still got 3 beers in our cask range, which are our core. We've got the Session is across both sides. We've got Bluebell, which is again like the evolution of one of the only other beers that kind of stood through that transition. That's our best bitter. It's a Sussex style best bitter, so it's much more kind of ruby and really aromatic, and almost got quite intense malt flavors, but really, really well balanced and just very, very quaffable. In fact, that's kind of like my chaser here at the minute. A cold winter evening at the moment, and again, like it's quite nice for us to kind of show that we can do a best bitter as well as doing a really juicy aromatic pale these days.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, we've got Tacoma, which is a 3.9 APA. And often, like when I'm speaking to publicans who are more kind of on the cask side or the camera side, they're like, APA should be 4.7. It's like, well, not everyone wants a 4.7 APA. So that's why we did a 3.9 APA. And they're like, okay, well, I can actually understand that logic when you actually put it in those terms. So it's called Tacoma. Just happen to have the badge on my desk, actually. So 3.9, Tacoma is the indigenous name for Mount Rainier, which is the volcano that overlooks Seattle. And so the idea with it was that the beer, with its recipe, it's single hop cascades. It's a sort of homage to the origins of craft, with the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale being a Cascade exclusive beer. And the Cascade hop takes its name from the Cascade Mountains, which is where Mount Rainier is.
That's very clever.
So like all of our branding's got that kind of idea of like time and place and location in it, which comes from like the brewery's name. I should have probably said this earlier. Like, so 360 is named after where we're based. So we're pretty much slap bang on the Greenwich Meridian line. So in terms of your coordinates, we're either 0 or 360. So the idea was, when it was originally set up where we are, that it would sort of take a 360-degree view of the world and take inspiration. And so as we've kind of come along, we were like, okay, well, let's turn that around into more of an idea of time and place. And that's then the discourse that runs through all of our branding. And then when we start thinking of these convoluted, silly names from songs, it will always have some provenance to the beer and its ingredients, or where the style and its origins are from. So I guess Tacoma is like a good little sort of dovetail into that. And then Bluebell is called Bluebell because we're right next door to Bluebell Railway. You've got Heritage Train Line, Heritage Beer Style, and that's where the name for that came from.
That's nice. Awesome. Yeah. I particularly, I know that obviously you've changed it to the Helles, but I think Checkmate is like a really great name for a Pilsner. Like, I honestly, when you said like, yeah, we had Checkmate like Pilsner, I was like, that is actually so clever. that one tickled me. I like that one. But you mentioned Green Monster. I actually wrote down as a question, because as a person that is literally born and raised in Boston before I came here, the Green Monster, I thought maybe that was, I saw it come up when I was like searching about the brewery and stuff. And I was like, maybe it's just a coincidental name. And then I was like, oh, it is a New England beer style. And then I was like, and that looks like the front of Fenway Park. And I was like, where? My question is, how did that come to be a beer? Like, that seems so, like, it seems so random to find green, like a reference to the Green Monster here, because that is a very region specific, not even Fenway. Talking about Green Monster is very specific.
Yeah, so it was from when we were in the earliest days of like naming beers. So like prior to that, we had, I guess I can kind of almost call it a prototype beer that was just called New England IPA. It wasn't exactly very New England. It was somewhat translucent towards transparent, which plenty of people, when they were looking at us down that microscope I was saying, was like, NEPA? No, it's not a NEPA. So let's rebrand it. Let's rename it. Yes, absolutely. Let's change it again. But yeah, when we were looking at what we wanted to do with that idea of time and place, we were thinking, okay, if you've got the beer style as a New England IPA, when you sort of then zone into New England as a region, Boston would often be the first city you think of. And then in terms of then its history, you've obviously got the beer scene, you've got revolutionary history is plentiful for Boston, but then it's also got a really good legacy with its sports teams, whether it's the Patriots, the Celtics, or the Red Sox.
Or the Bruins.
Or the Bruins.
It's like we're going to throw that one out there as well.
We got a hockey girl. And yeah, just as we were kind of thinking in names, like as Green Monster was said in the office, we're like, that's actually a really good name for a beer. And so then that's why it's got a picture of the Green Monster scoreboard on the can. And it's then when you actually kind of understand it, there's always that idea of time and place and provenance with each beer, whether it's the style or something to do with us or its ingredients or whatever. So yeah, that's why that one's called Green Monster.
Yeah, for anyone that doesn't know, and that's probably like 99% of the people listening to this, we're probably like the 1% that knows what that is. So you've got Fenway Park, which is the baseball stadium, it's hard because I watched the Red Sox play over here, and they played at, I think it was like Victoria Park, or it's the Olympic Stadium that they built, which is not the right shape and size for baseball. So my parents came over and we were watching it, and they had like trucked in dirt, they had trucked in they had flown in like all the actual components for the field, the pitch, and basically we watched them play the Yankees. It was Red Sox versus Yankees. It was very like contentious. My parents flew all the way here to watch it, and my dad was like, the field is so small. It's obviously like someone would get a home run and you go, obviously they can get a home run. It's so small here. So it's very different compared to an actual baseball stadium. I don't really think we have any baseball stadiums properly over here.
There's nothing really that compares to it.
But you have out on the field in Fenway Park specifically, out in, I think it's left field. It is a big green wall, and that's where the scoreboard is. And there's no actual seats out that way properly. I think there are some on top of it, but you're not really sat at like field level. That's where the scoreboard is. That is called the Green Monster. And yeah, so for anyone that's like, what, like, why did you pick up on Green Monster? That's because that's what it is, and I recognize that. And the Green Monster is a very big deal to Bostonians. That is like, you have Wally the Wall Monster is their mascot. He is the Green Monster. So it's fun facts about Boston.
Like every now and again we'll get like a random like quote on a tweet from like American expats over here who are watching Major League Baseball. American expats like tweeting about Green Monster when they watch Major League Baseball.
It makes sense, yeah. Like I was kind of like, I was looking to see if you still had any in stock. So I was like, I want to order some. I was like, there is none.
It will be back. So Green Monster is one of a couple of beers that we have as part of like that NEPA rotation. Because we ended up having that beer and Fishhook in stock at the same time. Fishhook had never really meant to be kind of part of our core range, but then we had a bunch of pubs all wanted to take it after it had done so well with its first batch. We were like, well, we'd be silly to say no to the volume, but then we were then not stuck, but we had 2 6% NEPAs in our core range at the same time, and they kind of then just get into each other's markets a little bit. So we then thought, right, let's actually kind of just give each beer like a period of time where it is like the core within a rotation. And then just people get really used to having it, then we take it away. So then they want it when it comes back. And so Green Monster is in that space at the minute where Green Monster alongside Neighbours was doing really, really well at all of our beer festivals. Everyone was asking for it. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of like the last batch we're doing for a little while. So then the hope would be, hopefully, that we're getting to a point where people are actually looking forward to when we're releasing certain periodical beers. So Green Monster will be back at some point next year.
I feel like you have to release it in time with opening day. Like that, it has to go somewhat in line with like opening day, because it feels like that just aligns so well.
You'll have to help me. When is that?
I don't know. I don't know this year's opening day. I don't know. I don't know. I'll Google it and I'll let you know.
I feel we've actually gone down some huge tangents. Should we go back to Pavilion?
This is what happened. This is exactly what happened.
I was looking at it on my desk. I'm like, I've not even poured it open yet.
Yeah. You know what? I was only gonna have one beer, but I'll have a second beer. I'll crack it. I helped us tangent. I will have another beer for the team. I'm
Of
looking forward
these-
to it as well.
Of these beers that we've been talking about, or maybe another one, which do you think like most represents 360 Brewing?
For us, I think it has to be Sussex Hayes.
Yeah.
Like I said before, that's the beer that has really begun to put us on the map and change people's perceptions of us, introduce new drinkers to us, because it's the drink of choice for a lot of people, is that sort of session strength pale space. It's also my personal favorite. It was my idea, so of course I'm going to be very biased when I say that one as well. Not at all proud of how that beer's done. But no, yeah, Sussex Hayes, I think for me is where like 360 is best represented. But then I guess if I was going to say a second, it'd be Bluebell, because we've got a really good representation still for doing cask, and like, yeah, I think Bluebell is in our top 3 for beer sales for the calendar year. Sussex Hayes has like been like way out in front for quite some time, but Bluebell is still up there in terms of like top 3 for sales, which I think says a lot in terms of like the fact that we can do those 2 contrasting styles and do them well.
Yeah. And is Bluebell just in cask?
It is, yes.
So people have got to visit the area to be able to come and get that.
Well, it's actually been doing really well, because like what I think for me is like a really nice kind of like sort of litmus test for our success is we're steadily making relationships with regional wholesalers and distributors around the country. So I've seen Bluebell being checked in Cornwall and as far north as like Northumberland, Newcastle kind of area. So yeah, like steadily we are getting our beers out to a wider market now. But yeah, you're right. Like to get it at its sort of freshest and most regular, it'll be down where we are down here and in sort of spots around Surrey, Kent, and London as well, which is nice, because like I think it's important to have beers where you have to go to the pub to have them. Particularly at the moment with obviously it's no secret just how tough the economic climate is, not just for people in the industry, but everyone as a whole. But then when you're looking at what business rates are doing for pubs, like they do need every bit of help they can get. And so if there are products where you have to go to your local and try them and enjoy them, then it's just doing a little bit to help towards helping everyone, and you get a good time out of it as well.
Yeah. I've seen a lot about I've been reading this recently, like beer is an occasion, and like it, like thinking of it in terms of occasions, whereas often it can just be thought of as like the lager that you drink down the pub, or the lager you have when you're watching the telly, you don't think about it. But like putting beer in terms of occasions, like going to the pub for a birthday, going to the pub for an anniversary, like having this special beer in for a meal, like I think we need to really be encouraging that, and like having it as an occasion, like to go to this place and try this beer. Like I think that's a really good route for us all to go down, and be thinking about it in terms of it being special rather than it just being the thing that's there. Because if we don't go to these places, if we don't go and drink it, it's not going to be the thing that's there, because it's going to go away.
Well, exactly. And I think that on the whole, I think a lot of people are now post-COVID probably drinking less than they may have done. And so it's then when you actually think about it more philosophically, like you're saying, Joe, alcohol as a whole is there to complement your experiences. It's there to elevate and enhance what you do. So then if you can then go and celebrate, then it's almost like a nice full 360 of everything working there.
Ta-da! Look at that.
So tell us about this, the Helles then. It tastes really nice. I love it. It's like the breadiness, the like bready graininess there, the maltiness. I like it. It's got a nice that's what I love about a Helles.
It's got a nice bit of lemony zip in there as well.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, you've kind of taken the words out of my mouth in terms of where the tasting notes are at for it. We wanted to really kind of be true to style with making a Helles, so we used Mittelfrau and Hallertau Blanc, so 2 very classic Bavarian noble hops. We've gone for a grist of Pilsner malts and Bavarian malts, and we're just really keen to make it just that really easy drinking, what it says on the tin beer, because sometimes with certain products like a lager, you don't need to try and reinvent the wheel with it. Like if you can do the style true and do it well, then people are going to really just appreciate it, as you kind of been alluded to, and appreciating the beer for what it is. And yeah, like we're all really, really happy with it. It's one of like a few beers where we're like, you know what, we don't actually need to refine this much. We've been really lucky, we've managed to actually kind of nail this on the head very early doors. So yeah, it was like a universal thumbs up from our entire team that we were making the right choice, moving away from Checkmate to this as our regular Pilsner lager style. And yeah, it's bready, it's got a really nice like crispness to it, but it's not too effervescent either. So it laters your palate a bit more. You don't get that kind of acidity you get from CO2 sometimes. And then you've got a nice bit of floral lemoniness on the nose as well. Just, yeah, all around, for me, it's a really, really good representation of the Helles. And I'm just, yeah, very, very happy that my colleagues can make some cracking beers. Makes my job on sales a lot easier, that's for sure.
Yes, it's right on the can as well. Approachable, engaging with a clean Moorish finish. And I feel like, yeah, it is very approachable. Like, I feel like you could give this to someone that's maybe doesn't even normally drink like a lot, like just has an idea of what lager is. And I feel like they can even tell that this would be like elevated from that standard like macro lager that you normally have.
Good.
And
We've
so
beaten Foster's, fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my god. Please. My friend brought Foster's over. I was drinking it. I was like, "Do you want some?" I was like, "No, that's all for you." And I gave him some of something I had. I think I had like a Helles or something that I showed. I was like, "Have some of this," and he tried some, and then he went to go back to drinking his Foster's, and he's like, "I can't do it." Like, I shared with him a bunch of these. I think I had a bunch of Hefeweizens actually, and I was like drinking those, and he had some, and he was like, "I don't want to drink my Foster's now. It doesn't taste very nice." I was like, "I know. Welcome to craft beer." But yeah, no, this is very Moorish, and what I really like on the can that I've noticed now is that you've put the hops on it. And Joe and I have like said before about how there's some brews that like don't always put their hops on it, but like for us, like we like seeing those things. Like we like seeing the hops and ingredients like put on the cans, because it helps it even helps just trying to teach yourself how to, like, when you're trying to educate yourself more about certain hops or yeast strains or stuff like that, when you can see the ingredients, like it makes it so much easier. And so yeah, I just noticed that now, and that's good. I mean, is that something that you guys have always done? Was that like a conscious choice? I know some people don't like putting their hops.
Yeah, there's I think there has been every beer we've done in can has had its hops put on it. I think this is something we like to do, is we like to share what it is, because like you said, once you start actually sort of delving into what's given this particular beer its flavors, then like I said, the more you engage with it more, the more we can then actually talk about it ourselves. We're like, we really like what we did with these hops in this beer, so let's see what we do with these hops in that beer, which is kind of almost going back to where we began with Neighbours was the evolution of Fishhook and its counterpart Boomerang, which were two like Southern Hemisphere like NEPAs we released at the same time with like respective Australian and New Zealand hops for them. And so put them together because we were like, well, we know we really like Vic Secret and Ella. We've not used them together with much else besides other Australian hops. We like Nelson and Moroccan for the same theory. So let's put them together and then we can talk about it. I mean, you guys go like, oh, I've had a 360 beer, or I've had someone's beer with these hops in it before. So yeah, we're always going to make a point of putting what's in them, for sure.
Super useful.
Yeah, because I know like we were trying to do an episode where we were talking about specific hops, and it was like, so it was so hard to find certain ones because not everyone puts the ingredients on, and we were like, so it is definitely like from a consumer perspective like really useful to have that. You mentioned before about how the MD comes from like a wine background and likes to have everything balanced, and it's just that led to a question of like how big is like the staff there? Like, how many brewers do you guys have, and what is the process like to get something greenlit to be able to be brewed? Does everything have to go through the MD? Like, how does that process sort of work? I find that quite interesting.
Yeah, sure. So Robin is a very hands-on MD and is in the building like a lot of the week. But it's because he gives a damn about it. He wants to make sure that everything happens right, and yeah, that we're all kind of like getting to where we need to be with it. So in terms of our staff force, we've got, I think it's 9 full-time. So we've got 3, so where my maths should be right now. So we've got three brewers, including a head brewer. We've got a part-time kind of brewery assistant, full-time Dre, myself and another colleague of mine in sales, general manager, and the tap room and retail manager as well. And then we've got like 3 or 4 other guys who are then doing part-time shifts, doing the tap room hours when that's open as well. And then they get like involved a lot more during the summertime when there's like event bars that we're doing. Like we've got a couple of campsites near us, so we often send little mobile bars to them for the weekends, and it works really well because it means that the campsite can still maintain like an atmosphere on site. And then there's like a really good relationship where they're like, we're more than happy for you guys to get your guys to come along, look after our campers. We'll then send the campers the next day to the tap room and so on. So that's worked really, really well for us. So yeah, we've got a really kind of good team for that through the warmer months. And in terms of the process, a lot of it's kind of actually sales led in terms of like new product development. So I've got a very active role in suggestions, mainly because I'm often the one seeing what's on bars the most because I'm out and about in pubs the most. But then it's a case of actually kind of trying to put some rationalism behind different ideas. So like, once we kind of regroup after Christmas and New Year, we'll kind of get everyone together just to literally just throw ideas into a hat, basically. So we did that at the start of the year, and we had some like interesting ones from the brewers. Like I can't remember like what the weirdest one was, but then like it was like even just simple things like they wanted to do an ESB, and we're like, okay, cool, let's do an ESB because we've got that cast program. And again, it ended up being a beer that everyone was really proud of because it showed that we like had that heritage side and could do it really, really well. And it was just some wacky idea. One of the brewers like, I've not done a traditional style like that before. I want to do it. So I was like, okay, cool. Well, let's build up to it. Let's get a couple of hazy pales in first to get people's attention, and then we'll go in with the trad.
That's a good strategy.
Like, I love where your head is at, but hang on a minute before we get there.
Yeah. So it's nice because like even for someone who's not making the beer like myself, I feel like a real level of tangibility to what I'm doing because I'll often be saying X, Y, and Z. Then like I'll give the almost like the brief to the brewers with Robin involved to put together the recipe to conceptualize it. I'll kind of just only give a brief bit of qualification in terms of you've used that hop in the last 5 beers. Do you need to do it again? Like just little things like that, just in terms of like from what I'm seeing in terms of the commercial viability side of it. But it's really good because then we've got like everyone feels like they've had a part to play in what we're doing. Like I know that one of our most recent brewers, Luke, honestly, he's so proud when he's like goes around in Brighton and sees like a beer he's made and he overhears someone talking about it. And you can't see like his smile is just so big, and that makes me really happy because it means that everyone really feels like they got a part to play in what we're doing, and it's a really good sort of team we built here as well now.
I was going to say, it sounds very much like a team atmosphere. The fact that you've got like an MD who is really passionate and like wants to be in all the time, and you've got the sales function like feeding in and helping with those ideas as well. Like that sounds like a real community and like a real team effort, which is really, really cool to hear. So yeah, no, that's amazing. I'm conscious obviously of the time and we still want to do one more beer. Do you want to crack the last?
Let's crack
the
this.
dipper? I'm gonna not crack the dipper open. I'm
don't
gonna
you
stick with the
crack
pavilion
the dipper.
because I know it'll happen. My body, I like dippers. My body says yes. My head says yes. But tomorrow morning when I wake up and my cold is worse, my body is going to be so mad.
I'm just accepting that my nose is going to be blocked for the next week.
Yeah,
I know, and I just want to commend you. So obviously we were saying at the start how like the first time we had a conversation, it was like literally a 2-day conversation. We've been back and forth on mail trails for like months trying to make this recording happening as well, and our timings were so shit. I was like, and then you weren't well, and then today I was like, I'm not feeling great, but we're doing this. This is not being. I'm committed to this. We're having this conversation.
I was at that same level as well because I was like, the next time I could in theory do it would be late January, and I'm like, the beers are there with the girls. I've already had to postpone once in the last 7 days. And like,
oh, it's like, well done to you for still coming on, because I think
job.
you were worse than, like, you were more ill than I was, so it's like very much like well done to you for that. But I was just thinking, like, it's just become a joke. At one point I was like, just, we don't have to apologize to each other anymore, let's just accept it for what it is.
Let's just skip the pleasantries on the emails now. We know
we don't have to apologize, it's fine. It was like tag, I was like, you're it. Let me know when you're free.
So this is
actually, like, I might as well introduce this dipper then.
Yeah.
We've got You Get What You Need, which is actually a really nice kind of example of the qualification of that team process. Because if you like, the start of the copy on the back is, you don't always get what you want, but we know what you need. That's basically Robin writing about himself, because Robin is a big fan of West Coast Dipper, and all of us in the team are as well. But we've seen with one we do, it doesn't always sell as much as we would perhaps want it to.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, people would rather an East Coast dipper. When you say the word dipper in the modern English market, they think soupy, juicy, hazy, not like ridiculously bitter, because the palate isn't always as good at dealing with it. So that's where You Get What You Need is now, and it's obviously a Rolling Stones song there as well, a little nod to popular culture with the beer name there too.
Yeah, so I was just reading the back of it, and I'm like, oh, I love Idaho 7 as well.
Yeah, Galaxy, Idaho 7, and Olicana.
Yeah, that's literally such a good combo. And I'm like, oh, I want to drink it. And I've just seen, like, you hold, and I'm like, I want to drink it so bad. But I'm gonna hold strong, and I'm not gonna do it. But I want to. Thankfully, we're winding down for a festive period, so I can just be as ill as I want once everything is done and ready for tomorrow. So I can do whatever I want.
Yeah. So it's an 8%, and we chose those hops because Galaxy is like the base of Green Monster, and I think the guys have kind of had a bit of like a period of time where they were missing using it as like the dominant hop in a beer. So they wanted to put it into this dipper. Again, really big fans of Idaho 7 and the pineapple notes you get from it. And then because we've done a lot of experimentation with English hop varietals in the last year, the guys have taken a real liking to Olicana and its kind of peachy passion fruit notes you get, and we've kind of found it's actually stood up really well against your sort of imported hops. And so we're like, well, let's chuck it in for good measure. We've got 3 hops that we're really big fans of. And yeah, the end result is a very like boozy, complex, really like aroma-driven dipper. I mean, Joe, what are your thoughts on it?
Dippers are not my favourite, so I'm not the best person to ask. But I get all of those, like all that fruitiness. It looks beautiful. Like all of your beers have got this really lovely, like dense, foamy head on them that looks just gorgeous.
I was going to say, it's unfortunate because I'm the dipper one.
Who's the dipper fan?
I was going to say, you might have to get you just to kind of bite the bullet and
but like, I get all that, like it's got like candied tropical fruit in there. It smells amazing.
I'm just living vicariously through Joe's commentary.
It's got really lovely pillowy body. Yeah, you
I also like that it's quite dry as well.
Yeah,
because like often you can kind of get that like almost, well, I love to say cloying, but like beers can be on the cusp of being cloy and too sickly sweet where they have really high finishing grav. So because it's got that dryness on the back of it, suddenly it just disappears on the back of your palate, and you're like, oh, where's that gone? All that booze and that flavour is disappeared in a good way. Like, and you're like, I need to go in again. So
it feels dangerous.
Is it one of those lethal ones? Like before you know it, you're like, oh, what? And it's gone.
Oh, 8%.
Right, so like now that this beer is actually out, our MD Robin's really proud of the fact that it's got our general manager Ollie shit-faced a couple of times. Ollie's kind of like he's like the sensible dad of the office, and just he helps process and facilitate everything. And he's not a huge drinker, partly because, well, I don't know. You can see it both ways. He's got 2 young kids, so has to kind of be on his game when he's at home.
Yeah.
He's actually pretty munted a couple of times from nights on our new dipper, which we're all quite happy about.
Is it because he's just gone like, yeah, I'll just have one? Well, I'll just have another one. Really.
Yeah, like this is
I
a
think
drink
that's
the
it.
can and
That's it.
fall down job because you don't realise how,
Oh,
how
those are the
strong it
best
is.
ones.
Yeah.
And I've noticed this is obviously, I'm guessing this is New York. I'm guessing this is, it looks like New York to me on the label. Is there any reason in particular, like, for why the artwork was chosen for it? Just because I love learning about labels, so that's why I thought I'd ask. It's fine if it's totally random as well, but
So the idea was it was a protest because Robin didn't get what he wanted.
Brilliant.
Really like that. See, I love, like, so for me, I really like the stories behind. I love punny names in general. It's like when you walk by a food truck and it has a pun name, you're going to eat at that food truck over the one that doesn't have a food name, like that doesn't have a pun name on it. Same thing with like beer. You put a pun name on it, like I'm there for it. I love when there's like a story to it as well, like a really like clever story that you learn about it. And I find that makes it almost more like appealing in a way because there is that connection, there's that story about it, and I think that is amazing. I love that. I was just like, I'm wondering if this is just a random stock photo or if it was picked for a reason, and now that you said that, I'm like, that's even better.
So we're moving into 2023. What are 360's plans for the future? Have you got any collabs coming up? Like, what exciting things should people be looking out for? Yeah, festivals.
Yeah, so I think for us, it's to just keep up on the trajectory that we're on. Like for us, it's nailing in on quality and consistency with every beer and between every release as well. So we consistently build up a head of steam. The wider our catchment gets, and people are like, okay, well, if that's my first impression and then my subsequent impression has been great, then we're on board. Meanwhile, our home market, I mean, like, wow, like 360 are continuing to deliver to us what we want. So that for us is kind of like our main mantle for next year, just to keep that consistency and quality piece there. But yeah, it's like collabs are kind of on the like up for discussion at the minute. We've had a couple of early discussions with some people. I'm not going to say just yet until everything's kind of fully set in stone, but there's some exciting stuff to look forward to. I think it's actually going to be quite an exciting one because like a lot of these relationships would have come from beer festivals we've been at already. So like a bunch of like a couple of them have come off the back of Arundel Beer Fest. We went down to Warrior Fest in Portsmouth, which is probably a massive hint for where one of those collabs might be.
Can't imagine which one potentially.
I think it was a staggering hint.
Brilliant.
Staggeringly great idea.
So there's some stuff in the pipeline, and like I'm really keen to kind of continue having those conversations because like I now am really enjoying the fact that we've got ourselves to a level where we've been gaining the respect of our peers at these events, and it kind of gives us some validation that we're actually on the right track, having gone through that period of transition where we've had to really turn people who had been doubters into believing in us, or at least as being willing to give us a second chance. But then to those who are doing what we're doing and grafting as we're grafting as well, and saying, you know what, you guys are making cracking beers, and we're like, well, you guys are making cracking beers. Let's make a cracking beer together. Let's do it. And it's nice that we're kind of at that level now where we can have these discussions with people. So yeah, so that's kind of where we're at with things. More festivals. Like we got onto the We Are Beer circuit last year, so hopefully we're doing a couple more of those. We're super keen to kind of get out and about as far and wide as we can. Like I'm going to probably get myself burned out like 1,000,001 times this calendar year, but like
that's what happens, isn't it? It spirals out of control. And before you knew it, like this is what Joe and I was like, which festivals are you go to? And then she started June working onwards, in beer, and it was like
mental.
Before you know it, all of my husband was like, can you make sure weekend that not every bit of free time you're either helping at a festival or going to a festival? He's like, it's fun to go sometimes. He's like, but could we maybe sometimes not? So I can imagine, but I find it so fun, and I actually find it's really fun being behind a bar. So I can't even imagine, like, you'll probably get burnt out easier than you even realize.
Yeah, so like for me, it will be for a good cause. Like the way I'm seeing for this next year upcoming, that I want to be out and about seeing people, like representing our brewery as best as possible. And yeah, like it'll take its toll, but it'll be for a good cause because like I hope it comes across that I care massively for what we're doing, but then like everyone around me in this business does. So that's kind of where we're at. We just want to get out, meet people, share our beers with more people, and yeah, hopefully we'll have some really fun, interesting things to come in the next 12 months.
Amazing. You said you've got a tap room, so if people want to come visit you, they can go to, I'm guessing, is the tap room at the brewery?
It is, yes. It's at the brewery. We've recently actually opened up our own pizza kitchen.
So yeah, I did see that on the website. It sounds delish.
Yeah. So it's like, it's funny. He was just in the room now. He won't hear this compliment, but yeah, Josh has been making some fantastic pizzas because just where we're at in at this time of year, we can't quite justify hiring a full-time chef just yet. So our taproom manager Josh has taken it upon himself to become head chef and taproom manager simultaneously, and he's been putting out some absolutely cracking pizzas. Like, I'll be the first one to tell him if it was shit because made.
It's always, is it killing you now that he's probably there hearing you and you're like, it's really good?
He's left the room, so I can't quite look him in the eye whilst I'm complimenting him, unfortunately. But no, he's been making some absolutely fantastic pizzas. We've got like a proper wood-fired oven in there. And yeah, like it's honestly as good as anything I've had locally, and I'm not just saying that because, like I said, I would tell him if it wasn't. So yeah, we've got the tap room open every Friday and Saturday. It's going to be closed off tomorrow until the new year, just to give everyone a bit of a break.
Much needed time off. Yeah.
No,
that's amazing. You've got me now wanting to go camping. Like, is that? I like camping, but that sounds like a really cool way to camp, is when you're saying like sending a mobile bar out to the campsite, so the campsite send people to your tap room, and like that sounds like such a that sounds like a really when I go camping, I don't have like nice craft beer on tap anywhere, so
I have to take it with you.
We've even installed like a special gate in our taproom fence into the campsite's land.
I need to know where the campsite is, because now I want to go.
So it's called WoWo, WOWO.
That's an amazing name as well. I love it.
Yeah. So yeah, they're really nice guys there. We've got another campsite just across the way called Ouse Meadow. And yeah, their footfall becomes our footfall in the summertime, and vice versa. So it's great that everyone kind of in our little local pocket of ruralism gets to benefit. So yeah, that's
really cool.
It's a really good spot, and we've definitely created a really like fun space here. And it's only been its first like 12 months. It only opened this time last year. So yeah, like everything's pointing towards opportunity being there for us. It's not going to be the easiest market this year, as we all kind of know, but it's all we've kind of done from the get-go with this new version of 360 to deal with adversity and try and overcome it. So yeah, we like a challenge, but everything's going in the right direction for us, it seems.
Amazing. Now, if you're dog friendly, then that will definitely be where I consider going camping, because because it's not far away, it's easy to get to, and I've got a dog, and if you allow dogs, then that is definitely for me. So amazing.
Yes, we allow dogs outside, just because we've got the grain store right in amongst where the beers are. But yeah, we've got a massive southern facing beer garden with like enough space for like over 100 people to sit out there. So yeah, it's where you want to be in the summertime anyway.
I know where I'm planning the next camp trip that we go on, so there we go. Thank you so much for coming and chatting to us. I know we've kept you a little bit longer than intended, but yeah, it's really appreciated. After all that time, I'm so glad that we finally got you on and we got to have a conversation, and I got to learn more about the brewery. Joe got to learn more about the brewery, and these beers so far that I've had are cracking. I literally cannot wait to have the other ones. We also had, just for the record of what else we had lined up, is the India Porter. I wanted to know, before we go, where did you actually get the name for that?
So Twanky Dillo is the name of a traditional Sussex drinking song.
That is amazing.
Yeah, as was the prank that someone on our taproom board played on Josh earlier. Took out the T and put a D in the end of the word. Josh hadn't recognised what had happened until a customer asked, "What is wanky dildo?"
And they probably went, "What? No, that's not the beer. That's not the beer." That's amazing. Yeah, I didn't know what that was, and I was like, "Where does that name even come from?"
Yeah. So it's a traditional drinking song. The background on the can is actually like a really like quite well known like tree roads down in like sort of the western bit of Sussex. So again, keeping the theme of it very Sussex based with the branding to go alongside the name there as well. Yeah, that's a really, really tasty number, that one. So it's definitely one to enjoy these winter nights.
Nice. Yeah, and then we've also got the rose hip hibiscus and raspberry sour. So that one is one that I'm particularly looking forward to as well. So I mean, you had a bunch of beers on your website as well. We'll put a link to the website in there for anyone that wants to go and check out an order. But based on the two, sadly the two that I could have tonight, I'm very excited, especially to try that dipper and the other one.
You're going to enjoy that dipper.
Yeah, I think I will, to be honest. Maybe that's like my tomorrow treat when I'm done with everything I need to do. Anything you want to plug? Anything at all? We'll link to the website and the Instagram, everything else. So
no, just I think just do check us out. We've got like 2 to 3 new beers coming out in can every month. Got a couple of cask specials as well. So if you're ever in the area, particularly kind of Brighton way or mid Sussex, then you'll often see us in pubs. But yeah, just keep looking out for us, and hopefully you'll be keen to give us a go at some point. And yeah, we might get a chance to see you at a festival some point in this year. So come and say hello. And yeah, it'd be great to meet you and have a chat about beers and hear what you think of them.
Amazing. Cool. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. Really enjoyed the chat.
It's been a lovely evening to chat. So yeah, I'm just glad we finally got to make it happen.
Yes, and I hope get to see you.
It was in danger of running on internally.
I hope we get to see you at a campsite soon.
Well, I didn't know that they were 10 years old.
No, I didn't. And like I said,
that was actual shock, dear listeners.
I think the thing is, I'd like seen them in passing more recently. I think within the last year at beer festivals and stuff like that. And obviously we had the conversation at Arundel. But before probably about the last year, like I didn't really know that much about them or anything like that. But then also I'm not like, I probably wasn't as much in the air, like drinking around in the area that they that they are, to be fair. I think,
but they're not that far from me, and they say they distribute in Kent, but I've not really seen them. So this just goes to show there are lots of little pockets of potentially great breweries that you might not know of. So we're in January. Try-annuary. Give somebody new a go.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I have zero complaints about either of the 2 beers that I had. The dipper sounds.
You're going to enjoy this dipper.
Amazing. I mean, yeah, I like the hazy juicy boys. So for me, like Neighbours was great.
Yeah, it's good. I like the name.
Like a Hellas Lager, so that's great. And the dipper sounded like it was exactly up my alley, and I'm really excited to try the other ones when I'm feeling better. So yeah, I found that the story behind the names and the times and the specific time and place and all that was like just really interesting and really clever. And I really liked how much of like team spirit they have in that sense. So yeah, I mean, I'd definitely try more from them for sure. And as you said, I think you can almost sometimes get so you can get so focused on either what is like the new hotness, like big name, or in your local scene, that you almost miss these little pockets in other areas. So definitely one that I'd recommend for Try-annuary, because they have such a range as well that it is, I mean, as you said, they want to make something that they want to have something for everyone. So I think it's worth putting in like I think you can do like a mixed, they do like mixed boxes as well, and so far 2 out of the lot I've got really like, and the rest sound really great. So appreciate him taking the time to talk to us and overrunning a bit. So yeah, I'm excited. When Green Monster comes out, I'll definitely try that.
Tori, if people want to get camping tips from you,
oh my god, I do love camping,
because you love a bit of camping.
I do love a bit of camping.
Where can they get hold of you?
Yeah, if you want to come talk to me about top camping tips. I mean,
top beer camping tips.
Yeah, I can talk to you about top beer camping tips, because I do always take my craft beer with me when I go camping. But I also like bougie camp a little bit. Like when I say I'm still in a tent, I still set the tent up, but I like to elevate my game. I like my craft beers when I go camping, all that. So yeah, you can come talk to me on Instagram at adventures_in_optimism, or at Gmail at adventuresinoptimism@gmail.com. Or you can sort of talk to both Joe and I, depending on who gets to it first, on a Woman's Brew on Instagram or a Woman's Brew podcast on Gmail. Joe, I mean, you've done your fair share of camping as well. So if someone wants to talk to you about you've done top camping festival and camping tips, someone wants to go talk to you about that, where can they speak to you?
Yeah, if you want to talk to me about camping, I camp with kids fairly regularly, so I can give
You've
you
got
some
kids.
tips on that.
It's the way to
go. Take the beer as well, but leave it till the evening. You might need it when you're camping with kids. So if you want to talk to me about that, you can find me at my beer school, which is Love Beer Learning, and we are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Pinterest. You can usually find me on Instagram or TikTok. And I do have a camping beer festival top tips blog post, which is on my website, which is lovebeerlearning.co.uk. Or feel free to email me at lovebeerlearning@gmail.com. And don't forget, of course, we are also on YouTube. Right, I think
I'm going to go finish the rest of my second beer and hope that I don't feel worse tomorrow with more stuffiness. So, on that note, Joe.
Cheers.